working with a diffusion model depends on what is called prompt engineering. The term refers to the writing of the prompt itself. Now, you have to be very precise in the way that you write your prompt, in the sense that you have to refer to aspects of the design, such as the rendering, the lighting conditions, the realism or hyperrealism of the outcome, and so on. And often I would recommend putting the word ultra before that. Ultra, hyper-realistic, and so on and so on and so on. But part of the prompt engineering process is anything but objective. It's not very objective because the way in which prompts work is they call upon data, examples on which they've been trained, that are themselves embedded in contexts. In other words, when you mention certain things, they bring with them their associations. So, for example, if you were to include the name of an Inuit artist from northern Canada, the chances are that if you're describing a building, for example, the chances are that you're going to get a building in the snow. And I particularly, very deliberately, include a reference to an Australian artist, because that brings with it the extraordinary quality of lighting that you get in Australia. Now, this is in the Austrian Alps, but nonetheless, you get a quality of lighting that is absolutely exceptional. But getting the prompt right is really an art form. It's more alchemy, I'd say, than engineering, but it definitely requires a lot of work. But once you've got a prompt that really works, then you can use it in many different ways. Now, this is a building in the Austrian Alps. And what is interesting about it is that the only reference to describe the building is that, to say a building in the Austrian Alps. There's lots of other references, but I didn't specify the rocks in the foregrounds, the mountains in the background, or the number of trees. That is all generated by Midjourney. But the language is really based on a few comments that I put in the prompt. Now, what is interesting is you can take that prompt with the language describing a certain language of design, and then change the name of what you're trying to, the object you're trying to generate. So instead of putting house in the Austrian Alps, you can, for example, put bracelet on a model. And what it will do is take that same aesthetic and generate a bracelet on a model. Equally, you could mention, for example, model carrying a handbag, and it would produce something also falling into the same aesthetic. And here I want to show you some earrings that I generated, again, using the same prompt, but saying earrings on a model rather than house in the Austrian Alps. This actually is the music of Laurie Anderson. It's called Oh Superman. But what is interesting here is that you have the possibility of using the same prompt from the level of the earring right way through to architecture and indeed urban planning. And this reminds me of the logic of the Gesamtkunstwerk, a concept that comes from Germany from the 19th century, but actually refers in many ways to what was happening in the era of the Baroque, when you'd see a relationship from the door handle through to the interior decoration, to the architecture, to the urban planning, and also the music that would go with it, the Baroque music. What we get then is something extraordinary that is opening up. I recommend that everybody tries this, tries to explore this, tries to get a good prompt, because it's really opening up the imagination of what architecture can be.